How do you test new mattresses? Flop like a fish? Inspect every square inch? Or order online and just hope for the best? You could test mattresses any number of ways, or let Mattress Warehouse's proprietary diagnostic test narrow down the selection for you. Visit a store near you to try Bed Match, the test that's matched millions. So where would you look to find the perfect mattress? In a little mattress store or Mattress Warehouse? Visit mattresswarehouse.com.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. We're recording this at Wembley Stadium. We've reached the stadium, we've taken our seats, and the team news has just been announced. So, Baz, first of all, before we go through those teams, because there's a surprise in there, how do you feel about this one? It comes back to that old question of, would you rather win the Cup or go for the Champions League?
Well, nervous. As I was saying a few minutes ago, though, you don't get to qualify for the Champions League up on the side of the Brentford stand, so winning the Cup would be nice.
Yeah, getting a trophy would be a fabulous achievement. So let's have a think about those teams. So the big surprise is that we have a first match in a long time for young Zach Abbott. The stadium is starting to fill up as ever. Loads and loads of Reds fans, and one of the things that I know has been talked about a lot is the idea about, for Man City fans, it's just another trip to Wembley. For us, it's an occasion. So what are you thinking about this? Do you reckon that the red wall at Wembley is going to roar Forest on?
I certainly think we'll definitely be louder than them. Obviously, there's a thing which is at the City ground, being such a small, compact ground, then that noise makes a real difference. It remains to be seen how much of a difference it will make in a big place like this. So.
Well, it worked 3 years ago, and the fans helped the team get over the line. So let's hope they can do it again.
And welcome to the 1865 studio. It's Stephen Topless here, and I'm joined by George Edwards. We're reflecting on the FA Cup semi-final defeat a day after events at Wembley. Both of us were there, George, and I was saying to you just before we came on that I'm more reflective on the day now, and I've kind of come to terms with the result and how things played out for Forest.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I think everybody was quite emotional, quite devastated by the fact that Forest had gone out at the semi-final towards the end, because we've came so far, and it really wouldn't have been a surprise if we'd beaten Manchester City, because we've got the quality to do so. And even with the selection headaches that Nuno had, it would be the most Forest thing to do to overcome them. But once that disappointment set aside, I think it was still a day to be cherished, still a day to remember for a long, long time, because Forest have came so far to be here, and Forest just made the day about themselves. You know, from the day I woke up, I'm in Wembley, and it was a sea of red from 8 a.m. in the morning through to kick-off. Red shirts everywhere around Wembley, inside Wembley. Mull of Kintyre was absolutely spine-tingling, and you compare that to Manchester City's rendition of Blue Moon that I don't think we all heard, because we were all in our own world there. And to see families, children taking photos, absorbing the day, it just, apart from the result, it was absolutely perfect. And it's a reflection of how far we've came, because 3 years ago we came down Wembley way with everything on the line. It was nervy, it was the culmination of that season, and if we'd have lost that game, who knows? You know, our success hinged on it. Whereas yesterday was a day to enjoy, regardless of the result, to put into perspective how quickly we've ascended. And it felt like the beginning. It didn't feel like the end or the culmination. It felt like the beginning of a new era. It didn't feel like the last time we'd be in Wembley for another 5 or 10 years. So apart from the result, you've got to accept it, because Man City, I think, on the day were the better side. But we'll still come away with such positivity. And now we put this aside, as the players have done so well, and we'll focus on the last five, the 5 finals. And we've got one goal to achieve now.
Let's pick up with that first half then. And we heard from Rich and Baz not long ago as they reacted to the team news live in Wembley, and we saw that Zach Abbott was in the team. They weren't sure if it was going to be a back 5 or a back 4. When the game kicked off, it was a back 4, wasn't it? And we had Abbott playing as a right back. Actually, he was an orthodox right back who was also trying to get forward. I think the one criticism I've got of the team there is that Abbott was getting himself out wide and looking to take up those positions to stretch the game a bit more, but they weren't passing him the ball. It was just not getting to him, was it?
Oh, honestly, it was almost like people, like Nuno said, don't pass to him. I don't know why. He was in acres of space so much down that right side. And I know that's the side that Hudson-Odoi obviously wasn't, but he's out there. He's calling for it, and nobody passed to him constantly. I don't think he got the ball sort of high. Maybe once or twice he overlapped, but he very rarely got into the game, and that's not his own fault. It's because nobody felt confident enough, maybe, or it wasn't part of the game plan to pass to him. But what a moment for him! What a brilliant professional to be part of the team all year, not really getting games, still playing for the youth team. And I did think he'd play as a right back, because if you play a back three, I think Willy Bolly and Morata would both have played. So I think his selection did indicate a back four pretty early on. And I think that was the right way to go. Obviously, Forest did the back four when we played City a few weeks ago, and that really worked. I think the impetus has to be to win the midfield battle against them, which we'll come on to. Forest certainly didn't. So Abbott playing, I think it's certainly not going to be the last performance or the last time we see him in a red shirt. Maybe even this season, if Ina's out, he could continue that. I think there's a few times, particularly second half, where he looked a bit out of it position-wise, particularly if they got down the other side. He wasn't really sure of which man to stand on, but that'll come with experience. And as an 18-year-old Forest fan playing in a FA Cup semi-final in your second ever professional appearance, I think you can't really ask much more of him.
No, he equips himself very well, and I think he can take away a lot from that performance. And from Forest point of view, I think, like you were saying, we probably weren't the better team on the day, and we started poorly. We allowed City to have the ball, and they were just knocking it around, putting their passing game together. They then get to the edge of the Forest box. I think Forest were guilty here of backing off a bit too much. It comes to Rico Lewis, who on the 18-yard line strokes the ball into the bottom corner. Matz Sels has got no chance, and inside 2 minutes, Forest are behind. And I think for us and the way that we want to play, that was the worst possible start.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. I think City were just ready for the occasion where Forest perhaps weren't. And Forest game plan obviously is often to try and tide over the first 10, 15 minutes and then grow into it. So to be hit off guard so much really didn't suit into how they were playing. But the goal set up a theme that was common throughout the match. It was how poor our midfield was. I think we mentioned the selection headaches Nuno had, which was Nico Williams and Ola Aina not being available. But for me, the one that was missed by far the most was Ryan Yates. We would not have considered that goal you said before we started recording, and I agree. If Yates had been in that squad, we would not have considered the amount of territory we did. We would not have been ready for the fight. Everything that Yates stands for was missing in this game. I think Dominguez and Danilo were too lightweight on the ball. They didn't control it very well. Positionally, they were caught wide too often. And you saw it. Can you still hear me? Yeah, you saw it for their first goal. The way Kovacic just glides in midfield, finds the gap between Danilo and Dominguez so easily, and then finds Rico Lewis in also acres of space on the edge of Forest box. He's got time to take a touch, think about where he's going to put it and place it in there. You should not be allowing that much space. Forest do so well, actually, at being tight in the middle and forcing teams wide. But they didn't do that enough. And yeah, the midfield was poor throughout. It set the theme for the first half. And second half, as we'll come on to, we did sparken up a little bit. But the first half performance was very flat, very conceding, if you like, and very surprising, really, as well, I think.
And it allowed the likes of Kovacic and Bernardo Silva to run the game in the midfield for City. They were very happy keeping the ball, composed with it, a goal up as well. So it just allowed City to really take the sting out of Forest, not only on the pitch, but in the stands as well, because I think that goal caught all of us by surprise. And it did shock everybody, I think, as well. We didn't see that coming. And in that position, with their experience, as you've alluded to there, they could play the occasion how they wanted to at that point, City. And the first half really followed that tone. Forest were toiling a bit and really struggling to get a foothold. I don't remember any chances that we created in that first half or many opportunities when we got into City's final third and looked threatening. And at that point, after the City had scored early on, you were fearing that they could have got 3 or 4 the way Forest were playing.
I think, to an extent, I think that obviously this season we've been quite comfortable with the mentality, and I think if Forest didn't concede a second goal soon after that, they would grow into the half. And obviously Man City have got quality that can hurt you at any time, and if you give them any ounce of space, they'll take it and glide through you. But I thought Forest would go into the game, and it was a surprise really that we were still quite flat throughout the half. I think maybe the Elanga selection didn't help. Obviously, Nuno's probably thinking about that because the amount of games that have gone to extra time and penalties, he wants players like Elanga to be fresh towards the end of the game. But obviously that doesn't help you in the moment. And Hudson-Odoi, for all his good work, doesn't have the pace, doesn't have the outlet, and I would argue doesn't have the desire either that Elanga does to provide us with an outlet and to be an option. I think Elanga's open far more often than he is. And I'll be honest, disappointed with Hudson-Odoi's performance throughout. I think he shows quality once Elanga's with him, but on his own, when you want him to be the man to support Wood, because you look at how well Elanga did in the Spurs game. Wood was dropping deep to support them defensively, and Elanga was there as the striker really, and he was the one allowing Wood to play to him. I don't think Hudson-Odoi did that at all, really. Defensively, he was okay at times, helping pulling him back down the side. And I don't want to pick a scapegoat out because I think it was a collectively poor display, and the issue was in midfield. It wasn't Hudson-Odoi, but I don't think having the lack of an outlet helped. And I think we just allowed City to be comfortable, and they would probably be kicking themselves that they didn't make their first half dominance count into a second goal. Sels obviously makes some good saves in the second half, but first half they really did struggle to create, given our poorness. So I suppose that shows that despite Forest being so poor, they still managed to maintain some sort of solidity. And that comes from Milenkovic and Murillo being such a solid platform that anything that comes towards them in the box, they just clean up.
Yeah, and it was good that Forest didn't cave in that first half. I think that could have easily happened the way that City were playing and the fact that we conceded so early. The game did peter out towards the end of the first half a bit, and it kind of settled down with City still dominating the ball and Forest not really getting close enough to them and struggling to get it back. So the game did peter out as we went towards half time. No real chances or anything created, and at the half-time whistle it was Man City 1, Forest 0. Let's now go back to Wembley and Rich and Baz for their half-time thoughts.
It's half-time at Wembley and Forest are losing 1-0. Rico Lewis scoring after just 2 or 3 minutes, and City carved through the middle of the Forest team. And Baz, that's something that they threatened to do quite a lot in the first 20 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, we looked half asleep, like we weren't really sure what we were doing, and they then basically took control of the game. They've slowed the tempo right down, and we have like moments, but not really chances out of anything. It's they're controlling stuff at the moment, so we need to do something different.
Yeah, and it's 20 minutes into the game before Forest woke up. I think it's fair to say the team and the fans were all a bit shell-shocked by that early start, and I think that Forest just needed to have a moment where they could get a touch of the ball and regain their composure, didn't they?
Yeah, and we've not really managed to do that. We've not managed to get... Callum's not been... barely touched the ball at all. He's been rushed every time he's on it. Same for Anderson. And Danilo and Dominguez, they're working very hard, but they can't do it with the ball.
Yeah, and I would say that Hudson-Odoi is wasted at centre forward and Gibbs White is wasted on the right wing.
Yeah, it's not working as it stands. Something needs to change.
Well, Elanga maybe.
Well, yeah, I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see Morgan get more involved in the centre, but I'm guessing that probably means taking Dominguez off or something like that.
Well, personally, I think Danilo's looked a bit rusty still, especially with the ball, and so I'd be tempted to take him off and stick Elanga on and then revert to a kind of a more tried and trusted.
Yeah, I mean, again, the 4-2-3-1 does rely on the fullbacks getting forward, and we know Toffolo can do that. Zach Abbott's tried to do that, but no one's played a pass to him, as far as I can see.
And also, when the defenders have had possession and tried to break, there's not been anyone moving, and that's where we've missed Elanga as well. And Hudson-Odoi, when he's playing as a centre forward, he doesn't know how to find the space really, does he? So,
no.
So I would just also say, it's been estimated by our good friend of the podcast, Steve Burns, who's in the same block as us, that Forest fans outnumber City fans by about 2-1. That might be a slight exaggeration. There's certainly many more reds and blues in the ground. Didn't hear, apart from celebrating their goal, didn't hear a peep out the City fans until 40 minutes.
No, but then again, we've been a bit subdued since the start of the game.
Again, a bit shell-shocked. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how the second half goes.
The 1865 Match Report.
Breaking news, and this one is almost...
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
So at half-time, George, Nuno made a change. He brought Anthony Elanga on for Danilo, and I think that was the right move. As you were saying, he probably should have started the game as well, Elanga, but at least he was on the pitch now, and very nearly made an instant impact.
Yeah, that's the thing about Nuno, isn't it? That he's not stubborn, and if he thinks he's made a mistake, he's often quick to rectify it. So you've got to credit him for that. And I think everybody wanted, the four in terms of Gibbs, White, Elanga, Hudson-Odoi and Wood on the pitch, our best attacking trio, the thing that makes us look the most fluid and the most threatening onto the pitch. And it was welcome with open arms. It obviously meant Anderson could drop into midfield as well, which I don't think he actually performed that well, but I was pleased by that because I think him and Dominguez, apart from Yates, are possibly the strongest two in there. And Danilo maybe isn't ready. I think he needs a pre-season to build his confidence up on the ball, and hopefully that'll come next season with a bit of a break, then to come back into it slowly. And I think he can still be a player for us, but right now doesn't really look at the physicality level that we'd require. But yeah, nearly instant impact. It's Hudson-Odoi with his first real impact off the game, isn't it, down the left-hand side, and Elanga darts through the middle and almost forces Hudson-Odoi to cross it because Elanga's running for 20 yards, charging in the middle, directing it, and he almost dragged the ball into the middle. It wasn't Hudson-Odoi, I don't think, that put the cross in. Obviously, he did, but if you know what I mean, the force of Elanga drawing it in, and then he does. It's a brilliant ball in from Hudson-Odoi. Elanga's goal silence is always going to be with the pace, making sure he's onside. And then I was right behind it. I was just as you're in the crowd to the right of the goals, I was on that side. The ball was blasted basically straight at me, and it should have been in the back of the net. Elanga coming onto it. And I'm not a striker. Well, I was a striker when I was 14. I did score 16 goals, but I'm no striker expert. And I just think he should come onto it with his left foot. He's got the whole goal to aim at if he does. And he's a confident boy on his left foot. I think he might have even scored more goals this season on his left foot than he does on his right foot. I think that could be the fact that he's just came onto the pitch where he's not really touched the ball at all. He wants to go with his stronger foot, whereas if he'd been on the pitch already and had a bit of match sharpness, been using both feet, he might come onto his left foot and step onto it. And even if he scuffs it then with his left foot, he's got a chance of getting it on target, whereas he makes himself aim for a very small target and he obviously missed it. So I think that's huge. And you look at how Manchester City scored after 2 minutes, and that really kicked the life out of Forest and gave them such security. If Forest had got a goal 30 seconds into the second half, that would have reignited the crowd, reignited the players, and who knows where we would have ended up. So that's a huge chance, possibly the biggest Forest did create. And I would have backed Elanga to score it, to be fair.
You would have, given his form and his confidence at the moment, you would hope that he could have taken that chance on. But like you say, probably went with it with the wrong foot and made it more difficult. And ultimately, that was a huge opportunity that went begging for Forest. And the pivotal moments in this game seemed to be at the start of both halves. So you had the Man City goal in the first half. You then had this miss by Elanga at the start of the second. And then a couple of minutes later, Forest were punished for that. We'll come to the corner in a minute, but there was a big chance for City just before that corner, which forced some brilliant goalkeeping from Matz Sels. He made 2 big saves to deny City within a matter of seconds.
Yeah, he does so well, doesn't he? Obviously, he's not really been called into action in the match, but he's always ready when we need him to be. Poor defender from Forest, I think, down the channel, and Zach Abbott was left in the middle with two players to mark and not really a clue where to go, bless him. So, yeah, I think Selsey does so well to be alert, to push them away, then to get up and claw that one off the line after it's deflected off Abbott as well. And it's just a testament to him that in every game, whether we play well, whether we win, whether we lose, he always makes 2 or 3 vital saves. And obviously, it didn't count towards the result this time, but it'll count towards his confidence as we go into the last 5. And it must fill people like Abbott making his debut with such confidence, knowing that Matz Sels is behind him 9 times out of 10, saving and bailing the whole defence out.
But Forest did concede again, and it was from the resulting corner. Omar Mamouche whipped it in. It was a high in-swinging ball, and it was Josko Guardiola, about 6 yards out, who rose unchallenged to power the ball past Sels and double City's lead. Watching it back, you can see Murillo leaps for the ball and doesn't get there, and that then allows Guardiola to come in behind him and score. And yeah, when City went 2-0 up, you just started to think, here we go, it's going to be one of those days.
Yeah, you did, didn't you? I do wonder if Sels perhaps could have came for the ball. I'm fearful of being critical of him because of his importance, and I'm not a goalkeeper, but I think in that 6-yard box, particularly from a corner, an in-swinging corner that's curling towards a keeper always, that should be the keeper's area, particularly if it goes towards the far post. But, it's a really good ball in, and somebody has to be there first from a Forest perspective. That's the trouble with the sort of zonal marking that we do when you've got somebody like Vardiel in the middle, who's such a target, who has rehearsed that situation so many times. And if he gets his header there, 9 times out of 10, he's going to blast it into the back of the net. Then it's a very hard thing to stop, really. So it just shows the fine margins of football, because Forest score with Elanga and City probably don't come forward with the same impetus that they do. Forest had a bit between their teeth, and it could have been 5 minutes later Milenkovic rising high and nodding in, giving Forest a 2-1 lead. But as it was, we missed the chance, and then City go up the other end and make their quality count. And they show that, despite their poor form this season, they're still a formidable side, and they can still score in very multiple ways.
Forest did look better in this second half, though, and they seemed to grow in confidence. They looked more attacking. They pressed City a lot higher, and I think having Elanga in the team certainly helped. Just having that pace and an outlet was giving the City defenders something different to think about. The next big chance did fall to City, though, and it was, first of all, from a corner, and then Mamouche and Grealish worked it between themselves nicely. Then Mamouche drove down to the left-hand side of the penalty area, hit a high shot, which Matz Sels, again, made a good save from, tipping the ball over. And then, 2 minutes later, Forest go up the other end. It's Elanga who carries the ball up the pitch. He then plays 1-2 with Chris Wood, gets the ball back, dinks the crossover from the left-hand side, and then Morgan Gibbs-White, he's on the edge of the area. The ball's coming towards his left foot. He connects with the volley so sweetly, and it crashes off the crossbar and away to safety. If that goes in, it's an incredible strike, isn't it?
Yeah, Morgan's so unlucky there, isn't it? And it's the first sort of, maybe apart from the Elanga chance inside the half, it's the first showing of Forest at their counter-attacking best, because City have pressed forward. Wood then gets forward. It's a brilliant run from him and ball. And then the support comes, and yeah, what a ball into Gibbs-White. But he's got so much to do, and often you see them sort of shots scuffed towards goal and they go in or something like that. But like you mentioned, with his weak foot as well, he connected with it gorgeously. It's a brilliant hit with such venom and pace, and there's no chance that Ortega would have got anywhere near it if it had been on target. He just got to watch and hope, and we're so unlucky that it's crashed off the bar. Then 2 minutes later, obviously the chance comes where Forest press, as you mentioned, press so well, win the ball back, and Morgan gets past the keeper and bangs it against the post. And when things like that happen, when we miss the Elanga chance, and when City have really 2 clear chances and score them, apart from the couple of save Sels makes, you just think it's not your day, don't you, in front of goal, and that City were destined to win, because Forest did give it a fight. I didn't think the performance levels hugely increased, but we had more of an outlet because Elanga was on the pitch. And the fact that Forest can still, and they've shown that countless times this season, they can still create chances, even if they're playing poorly. To hit the bar the post 3 times in the end, it turned out, against Manchester City, and the Gibbs-White header that we'll come on to that they missed late on. You just think it's not your day. You take so much credit for creating those chances. And one thing we need to say is, Morgan, you don't need to apologise. Obviously, he does the post-match interview after the game and apologises. That's the last thing we need, because he's carried us for the past 2.5 seasons to the successes, minor successes that we've had staying in the Premier League. He's been the spearhead of everything that we do so well. And I think the defeat hurt him the most. You could see at full time his emotion, and when he was talking to Pep, that annoyed me. But you could see how upset he was that this didn't happen for us. And he's such a credit to the club, and he doesn't need to apologise at all, because, he's my lord.
I think he was as good as anybody on the pitch yesterday. Morgan, he was, as we've just spoken about, the player who came closest to getting Forest back in the game. 2 agonising opportunities. First of all, with the volleyed shot that comes away off the crossbar, and we're denied a wonder goal at Wembley. And then that one where we've pressed the ball, won it back. And as he's running towards goal, the angle is always getting away from him a little bit, and he's trying to just squeeze the ball back on target, and it just comes off the far post and away. And then
I did wonder in that moment if he could have waited for somebody in the middle, but you look at the replay, there's nobody even in the box at all, is there? So he's done the right thing there. He just, that it just curled away from goal, unfortunately.
And with 20 minutes left, just after Gibbs-White's second opportunity comes off the post, Forest make 2 changes. Elliot Anderson and Chris Wood come off, and they are replaced by Ibrahim Sangare and Taiwo Awoniyi. And then 10 minutes later, Awoniyi hits the post again. Can you believe it? It was a bit of a scuffed effort inside the area. It looked a little bit of a shinner from Taiwo, but the ball comes flush off the post, and then Gibbs-White comes in with a reflex header, but Stefan Ortega in the Man City goal dives across and saves it. And I think if you didn't know it before, certainly when these chances don't go in, you just know it's not happening for Forest today.
I don't know how that's not going in, honestly. Like, how much closer do you want to get? I mean, obviously, a chance with Taiwo is always going to be a half chance, even if it's a tap in from 3 yards out. So you can never bank on that. But Morgan coming in with such momentum as well, heading it in the one place that Ortega's getting up to and to defend, and then City clearing, it all just felt inevitable that City were going to get it done. But it didn't stop everybody in the stadium. The 36,000 Forest fans waving their scarves, singing the songs, enjoying the day. So regardless of the fact that Forest were never going to go through because luck wasn't on their side, as it has been so much this season, it's a day and it's a memory and it's a time that we won't forget. And we've not gone out with a whimper. That's the main thing. That's what it felt like at half time, that if we carried on in that vein, we'd have gone out with a whimper. But no, we made substitutions and tried to impact the game. I thought Sangare did well as he came on. I think Anderson struggled to impact the game with his 2 positions that he was in. And yeah, Forest have given it a good fist. We've taken on Manchester City in an FA Cup semi-final, and we've came so close to scoring. How we haven't scored, and the fact we've not got that Wembley goal, that Wembley moment, is a bit sickening and heartbreaking, because even if it was 2-1, we'd have had that celebration. But it just wasn't to be.
And who knows, if one of those chances goes in and Forest make it 2-1 with half an hour left, you don't know what that would have done mentally to the City players. They might have retreated more. They might have started to worry that Forest could wipe out their lead. That gives Forest more encouragement. And I think we would have really piled the pressure on even more had we reduced the deficit.
And you think even back to the Newcastle game, we score on the brink of 90th minutes and we get 4 minutes of added time. And I'm convinced that even if that was 2 or 3 minutes, we'd have scored another one. So Forest could have scored in the 85th, 86th minute and still given it a good fist and gone on to score another. So they just needed that one to kickstart the fight back, but it just never looked like coming.
Interesting you mentioned the Newcastle game as well, because I think the pattern of this match followed not only the game at Newcastle, but also the game at Villa, where we started slowly. We were blown away a little bit by Newcastle and Villa. in those games. But we were behind, and then in the second half turned it round and were very close to pulling a result out of the fire. So we know that Forest have got this kind of fight back in them, and they're capable of taking the game to the opposition when they need to. But I think it comes back to that opening City goal. I think that really ruined our game plan and knocked the stuffing out of us. And then after that, especially then when Vardiol makes it 2-0, I think on the day we just left ourselves with a little bit too much to do.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I think there's individual mistakes, there's collective mistakes that lead to the two goals that, if Yates have been on, like I say, I don't think we can see the first one, the first one especially. And then it just comes down to the fine margins and to the look of football, because it was never going to be Forest Day, I don't think. But yeah, we've taken so much positivity from this game that we can take into the last 5, because we've now got 1 goal to aim at. It would have been amazing to have an FA Cup final coupled with the league. But now we've got 1 basket to put all of our eggs into, and we can't afford to let this deflating loss, because it'll hurt more than most defeats. It's a horrible place to lose. At Wembley Stadium is the best place to win, the worst place to lose, is often it's said. But Forest have reacted so well this season from deficits, from setbacks, and they have to do the same this time. Obviously, they've got a bit of a break, and it's Thursday night, not immediately on the Wednesday that they're playing, but they'll put it behind them. They'll come back, and they've got to now reignite and go for the final push in the final 5 this season, because it would be such a shame for this amazing season to sort of peter out at the end with a semi-final and poor form at the end of the season. But I've got every hope that Forest can kick on and can rediscover the form that has got them towards the top 5 of the Premier League and an FA Cup semi-final.
Hopefully so, yes. Let's now hear an opposition view on the game. It's over to Man City fan and friend of the pod, Mike Passaris.
Hi guys, look, obviously delighted with the result and to be in the final. A bit of a hard game to analyse in some respects, but going just to the lineups itself, for City, Grealish and Rico Lewis were a bit of a surprise for me, given they haven't played a lot of football lately, and just interested to see where they may have lined up. For Forest, I was a little bit surprised that Elanga didn't start, especially given the threat that he usually brings. He's the sort of player that can hurt us over 90 minutes. Obviously, we got that goal early on, and normally I'd say it's a good sign for us, but I must admit it, at the time I thought maybe that's a little bit too early, given how sort of Jekyll and Hyde we've been by our usual standards this season. I thought Forest were a bit rocked for the first 15 minutes, maybe just the occasion. Obviously, the Wembley pitch is quite big, can be quite sapping on the legs. Especially after conceding early, I'm sure it would have been a bit of a shock to the system. And I felt we were probably allowed a little bit too much time on the ball, wasn't really too much pressing going on. But we didn't really make too much use of that after that goal in terms of being incisive and cutting in and making the most of it. Obviously, we know Forest are set up to play on transitions and counter-attack, which we have struggled against before. I was having flashbacks of the game at the City Ground a couple of months ago, just, imagining a Morgan Gibbs-White, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Elanga combination on the counter-attack and hitting us that way. Probably after the first 20 minutes or so, the likes of maybe Morgan Gibbs-White sort of settled into the game. Hudson-Odoi I thought was quiet, but felt that there was a little bit more pressure on us in terms of building out the back, a little bit more pressing and pressure, making it a little bit harder to get through. As I say, we kept a lot of the ball, sort of worked down your left-hand side, but again, without much incision. Second half, for me, the intensity from both teams really stepped up. When Elanga came on, I feel he gave you guys a real lift. And at points it felt like Forest were trying to, were getting a foothold in the game. And then, of course, our second goal comes from nowhere, really. Good header by Gvardiol. I'm sure Gibbs-White's probably feeling a little bit unlucky today with those chances that he had, and, hitting the crossbar 3 times is, another day those probably go in. Overall, I think we were good without being devastating, and I think probably the main difference between the two teams has just been clinical and a bit of luck. You still created chances, and as I say, on another day, you're probably wondering what could have been. In the end, 2-0 did flatter us a little. But, if Forest take their chances, it could have been another story.
The 1865 Match Report.
From emails to reports and project proposals, it's hard to meet the demands of today's competing priorities without some help. Grammarly is the essential AI communication assistant that boosts your productivity at work so you can get more of what you need done faster. Just a few clicks can tailor your tone and writing so you come across exactly as you intend. Get time back to focus on your high-impact work. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Okay, so we all know the result. It ended 2-0 to Man City. Baz, that second half was an absolute roller coaster with the substitution of Anthony Elanga making a difference the way Forest were playing, and also with his very first touch could have been an absolute game changer.
Yeah, on I said part way through is we should win this, and I thought any other day we'd done enough to win it. It's just that nothing was going right for us.
Yeah, and I think, for the listeners' benefit, you had said pre-match, it's like, we're either going to win this or we're going to lose 2-0.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you were right in that respect. I think let's just very, very quickly reflect upon the fact that Forest hit the woodwork 3 times, and it's been said in our group chat that particularly the Gibbs-White volley, I mean, for a start, I wasn't expecting him to connect with it as truly as he did. And when you hit it with that degree of power and that degree of direction, and it doesn't go in, you know it's not your day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's just, I mean, you made the point as well that, like, none of the second balls were coming to us. So for us to, I mean, they weren't panicking, but Manchester City were really rattled in the second half. And for us to be able to keep them that rattled without winning second balls shows how good we were. Nothing was just. It was, as I said, it's like just a few inches off all the way.
And crucially, I think as well, that idea of playing a more traditional Forest way with Elanga on one side and Hudson-Odoi on the other, it stretched City in the way that we just totally didn't do in the first half.
Yeah, we took the game to them, like we were saying at half time, something's got to change. Well, it did change, and
actually it's the change that you and I talked about in the first half, because Danilo had not looked on it, and it was an opportunity to go to a way that Forest have been successful with this season.
Yeah, and the other thing to note, once we did that as well, it was like the fact that we had neither of our first choice fullbacks on didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because we were taking the game to them, and we didn't have like masses of possession as ever, but the possession we had we used properly, and it didn't really matter that the fullback. The biggest disappointment of the second half was their goal, because it's the kind of thing that we just don't let people do anymore.
Yep, we went zonal, and there's a whole thing of like zones don't score goals but players do, and Guardiola did so, and I mean, ultimately I think we'd be remiss to not remember that City did have chances, and Matz Sels did have to make 2 or 3 good saves, so it's only fair to point out, and City will feel, you know what, actually on the whole we probably deserved that, but there's something to be proud about as well in terms of that second half performance from Forest. So it's back to business on Thursday in the league, and it's all going to be about the way that Forest respond to it, isn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, of all the teams in the run, I was just saying, Brentford are the ones that I'm most nervous about, so we're going to need the biggest reaction to deal with them.
Okay, thank you very much, Baz. We're going to continue our weary way home. I will now pass back to Stephen in the studio for the rest of our match reports.
So, George, it's not going to be an FA Cup final appearance for Forest this season. We've fallen short at the semi-final stage. Disappointing, of course. Nobody ever likes to lose semi-finals in any competition, particularly at Wembley. But Forest, I think, do come out of the game with some credit, the way that they fought back and despite not playing to their full potential, they still gave a good account of themselves, hitting the woodwork and at least taking the game to City in that second half. What are your final thoughts on the performance at Wembley and the day as a whole?
Yeah, I think on the pitch there's plenty of positives and negatives to take. I think we've mentioned Zach Abbott. That's certainly an option going forward if Iron's not fit. If he wants to continue playing Zach there against Brentford, I'm sure he'll relish the opportunity. And Harry Toffolo had a much better game, I thought, than he did against Tottenham. He obviously got a lot of plaudits after the Tottenham game for his goal line clearance, but I was actually quite disappointed by his defensive work. I don't think he stopped a single cross. And obviously City were playing more through the middle a bit more, but I thought Toffolo performed a lot better in this game and possibly is now ahead of Alex Moreno in that sort of backup left-back spot. And there, take credit and positivity from the way Forest reacted, the way they didn't let a 2-0 deficit with 10 minutes, 5 minutes to go stop them. They still fought forward. They still made attacking changes, Nuno did. And they still, I think, believed until the whistle was blown that they had the quality in them to try and get back at Manchester City. And you've just got to hold your hands up to a team of City. I think they look more experienced on the day. They look more at home at Wembley Stadium. The occasion, it wasn't an occasion for them. It was just another 90 minutes. And I know that's easy to say when you've lost to a side that have done it before. And then off the pitch, I think you've got to take so much positivity and enjoyment from the day. I think Forest lost the battle on the field, but off the field, they won. I think Forest won, Nottingham won, football won, and the FA Cup won because Forest showed exactly what it means to be at Wembley for an FA Cup semi-final. There's all City fans on Twitter saying the FA Cup semi-final shouldn't be at Wembley Stadium, But for Crystal Palace fans, for Aston Villa fans, and for Nottingham Forest fans, we all proved exactly why it should be. It's the day out. It's a chance to go out to Wembley, to enjoy yourself, to reflect about how your football clubs came this far. And, it's a day that will be treasured forever. Whether Forest are back here next year or in 10 years' time, it's an absolutely unforgettable moment. And the atmosphere, the positivity generated, the fact that everybody, 90, 80%, I'd say, of the crowd stayed to applaud the Forest players off the pitch because they know what this FA Cup run has brought them. It's brought them to Exeter away, to Brighton away, and then 2 home games that have been through every single emotion as this season have. And I think this FA Cup run has summed up this season, the mentality, the fearlessness, and the fact that it's all been to a fine margin because Forest have very rarely, apart from Brighton, blown teams away. It's been 1-0s, 2-1s, dogged draws, and everything has been on the line and nothing's came easy for them. So I just hope that we're at the FA Cup now. I hope that the league run doesn't come to an end in similar fashion, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure that it won't. I'm sure that everybody will be ready. And Nuno said after the match, didn't he? He said something like, once the sadness has gone, the positivity will come back and we'll see that we've got a lot to fight for. We know exactly what we've got to fight for and we know that it's in our own hands. We've got Brentford, which is not a favourable home game because they're in good form at the minute, but I think Forest will back their chances to beat them if they can keep Emblemo quiet and if they can start fast as they often do at home. Then they've got an away day at Palace, which who knows if they're going to be switched onto the FA Cup or not, but Forest this season aren't daunted by the places that they go. Then Leicester at home, which looks like it should be a very much winnable game, but who knows in football. Hopefully Forest approach that as they should. And then West Ham away. And those 4 fixtures really set it up nicely to hope that Chelsea on the final day maybe doesn't rest so much as we're hoping for, and Forest might only need a draw or it might already be confirmed. But yeah, it's been an amazing season. Wembley's been an amazing ride. The FA Cup's been incredible. And regardless of where we end this season, it's something that we'll all treasure forever. So thank you, each and every one of everybody at Forest for giving us that moment, that day, and this season. Thank you.
And next up for Forest, they are back in league action against Brentford on Thursday night. This is an opportunity to get back up into 3rd place and keep the challenge for Champions League football going. Like you say, George, Forest know what they need to do now this season. Now they're out of the FA Cup. And yeah, I can't really add much more to the words you've just said either. It was a fantastic experience and it's given us days that we'll never forget. But yeah, it's now back to league matters. And the big thing I think for us now is we are going to get Nico Williams back. We're going to get Ryan Yates back for this game as well. And hopefully Forest will use a bit of bad luck against Man City and channel it into a positive and turn that into a win against Brentford, because Forest are certainly capable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I have very little doubt that the players will be ready, that this will be out their mind, and they'll want to put right the last home game as well. That was a disappointing and surprising performance against Everton. So they'll be thirsty for that. They'll be thirsty that the 37,000 Forest fans at Wembley, for them not to be deterred and for them to all have a lasting positive memory of this season. So, yeah, I'm confident they'll all be ready. They'll all be fighting and they'll all want it. So come 7:30 on Saturday or Thursday, I believe everybody will be ready.
Indeed. Let's leave it there then. There will be no Friday 5 this week due to the Brentford match on Thursday, but we will have our match report for that game. But we will have our match report from that game in your feeds later this week. We'll also look to reflect upon Nottingham Forest women lifting the Women's Championship title at the City Ground, which also happened yesterday while the men's team were at Wembley in the FA Cup semi-final. So there has been some positives coming out of Forest this week. We'll be back with our Brentford match report, so we will see you then. But my thanks go to George for joining me, to Mike for providing the Man City view, and of course to Rich and Baz for their thoughts from Wembley. Until next time, we'll see you later.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.